Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. So today we are going to officially do our first power rankings for the 2024-2025 NHL season. I'm really excited for this season. I'm sure a bunch of you are as well. If you like this content, want to see more videos like this every single month, on the 1st, we will be doing a new power ranking. So for this edition, it would typically be the October power rankings, but I decided to call it the preseason power rankings because we're still in the preseason. We haven't seen any games yet for the official 82 game schedule for these 32 NHL teams. So we're going to jump right into it today. We're going to start off at 32 and we're going to work our way all the way up to who I believe is the top team in this year. So looking at number 32, I'm going to pull up the list of the next 8 teams. So you guys are going to get a breakdown by each 8-team segment. And that's kind of how we're going to work this. So let me know what you guys think of that. But let's get right to it. So at 32 is the San Jose Sharks. So the San Jose Sharks are at 32. Probably not much of a surprise to any of you guys. I think the Sharks are going to be better than they were last season, but that's not really saying much, unfortunately. I think the Sharks are a team that still has a lot of work to do. I think the key factor for the Sharks is if Yaroslav Askarov could come in and be a world beater, but you're asking for a lot. For a guy that doesn't have a lot of NHL experience in between the pipes, he's going to have to come in and do a lot of work. So I think it's going to be a rough season for them. I hope it doesn't stunt his development, but I believe enough in Askarov, he should be okay. 31, we've got the Blackhawks. Now we are now in year 2 of the Connor Bedard era, right? It's crazy to even say that now. He is no longer a rookie. He's no longer the new kid on the block. Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks, they made some interesting moves this offseason trying to bring players in around him, hopefully to add to that scoring depth. They've added some grit to the bottom 6 over the last couple years, a pretty big bottom 6 to that lineup. Really what it's going to be this year, I think the biggest thing is the defense is very young. And I think there's going to be, like we've talked about already here, I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains for the Chicago Blackhawks back end. And, I think as much as there's a lot of skill and talent back there, Kevin Korchinski, Ethan Del Maestro, as well as many of the other players like Lev Shinov, who could potentially make the lineup. This is a team that's going to be very young. So I think when you look at the Blackhawks, I kind of look at them as going to be the Buffalo Sabres, right, where they've got Dahlin and Power and all those young defensemen. I think the Blackhawks are eventually going to become that type of team. So, yeah, that's where the Blackhawks are. Number 30, I know. Shout out to PJ. I know he's probably not happy with me, but I think the reality is at number 30 here, the Calgary Flames are a team that is probably ready for an utter collapse. I hate to say that. I don't like to be negative on the channel, but I think the reality of the situation is this is not a good enough Calgary Flames team. They've lost Jacob Markstrom. He's no longer with the club, goes to the New Jersey Devils. A bunch of guys on the back end have left, really not even last year, but the last couple of years just in general. This is a very different Calgary Flames team. They have prospects like Zane Parekh, who they're very excited for. Probably won't see a lot of those guys this season. We're going to see, hopefully, guys like Matthew Coronado get into the lineup, which is exciting. Mangiapane left this team. He's now a member of the Washington Capitals. So a couple of interesting things for the Calgary Flames to make me think that they are due for a major regression. Like this could be the year where things just tank, and they are hopefully going to be going for that first overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Unfortunately for the Calgary Flames, it's hold on, because I think this is going to be a rough season for the Flames. Number 29 is the Montreal Canadiens. What's tough about the Canadiens, and I said this in my preseason rankings, a lot of the Habs fans are excited, and that's great. You should be. But I think when I look at a team like Montreal, I'm not sold on the goaltending. The goaltending has shown promise and, little things here and there to make you believe. But compared to the rest of this division and this conference in the East, they just don't seem like they have enough depth yet. I like their guys up front. I think their forward group is actually fairly talented, fairly competent, especially adding guys like Patrick Laine to the group. That's a really good addition. But now we're starting to hear the injuries starting to come up with Laine and some other players on this team. It does have me a little bit worried about just where are the Montreal Canadiens. Even at maximum health, I don't know if they compete with a lot of the top teams in this division and conference. Let alone now you start throwing the collateral injury damage here before the season even starts. It could be an interesting season. So hold on to your horses there if you're a Habs fan. Now I gave it away. Number 28, we've got the Washington Capitals. So, yeah, the Capitals, again, another team like Calgary where I think they're really going to fall off this season. I was a little bit worried about Ovechkin's scoring, especially as the season wore on. He did get a little bit better. The beginning of the season was not good for Ovechkin. But this team runs on his offense. If he's not scoring, this team's not scoring for the most part. And as much as you like guys like Dylan Strome, and now TJ Oshie is officially retired, Backstrom's no longer there, Kuznetsov's no longer there, they bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois. There's reason for optimism here, but I just don't think the pieces are going to add up the way that I think the Capitals management expects it to. So really the key additions to this team, like I said, guys like Andrew Mangiapane, who I mentioned earlier with the Flames, and then of course you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois coming in. I like both those guys. Mangiapane, I think I like a little better than Dubois in terms of a fit with the Capitals, but we're going to find out. And now, Darcy Kemper no longer with this team. They bring in goaltender from the Vegas Golden Knights. So this is a team, and Aiden Hill. I think it's Aiden Hill. Is it Aiden Hill or the other guy? You guys are going to rip me apart for that. But yeah, this is a team that has a lot of things to be excited for. But again, it's young guys that we might be seeing a little bit, like Mreznichenko or guys like LaPierre or McMichael, right? The next generation of the Capitals, we're going to see them play a more prominent role this season. Moving on up now to number 27 is the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Flyers, what I like about the Flyers is, of course, the fact that Michkov is coming over. The identity, that is huge. That plays a big factor for what the Flyers could potentially be capable of this season. I look at their record last year. Things obviously tailed off big time at the end of the season. They won 2 of their final 10 games in the regular season, and they just barely missed the playoffs. It was a heartbreaking way for things to go for the Philadelphia Flyers, and I think they overachieved a little bit last season. I think the goaltending, a little bit unstable right now. I think there's a lot of promise there with Urson and Kolosov. And Fedotov, for that matter. All 3 of those guys are going to be splitting up time in between the pipes for the Flyers, but I just don't... I am not sold quite yet on this team being a legitimate playoff team. And again, you've got teams, I think, that are ahead of them, like the Penguins and the Islanders. I think those are the teams that the Flyers are really going to have to be competing with this year, and I think in terms of depth and goaltending, they don't really stack up as well as those other 2 teams. Number 20, what are we up to? 26. The Columbus Blue Jackets. This is an interesting one, obviously, because of the whole Gaudreau situation. I think this is going to be a team that, if you want to talk about a team that nobody expects to make the playoffs that can, it might be the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think they're a team that might surprise some people. I think they have a lot going for them in a horrible situation. They might be the most motivated team in the National Hockey League right now. And I think with everything that's happened over the last couple of years, with this team between, Elvis Merzlikins, and obviously what's happened here with Johnny Gaudreau this summer, is a team that's gotten ripped apart a couple of times in their franchise. And, I think there's a team that's going to be motivated to come out of the gate. I think they're going to look to prove a lot of people wrong. They've got a lot of young talent there. Might be a little bit naive, which could be their advantage and also their downfall. But I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to give a run this year, maybe more than people are expecting. And that's, maybe even giving them a 26 is probably a little bit of a disrespect. I think they could be closer to around 20. But I think that the Blue Jackets, it's safe to put them here. But don't be surprised if they come out of the gate pretty strong this season. We'll see what happens. Number 25 is the new club on the block, or the new relocation team on the block, is the Utah Hockey Club. So Utah, there's a team, again, kind of similar to Columbus, where I think they could surprise some people and actually be further up in terms of maybe even making the playoffs next season. I like some of the additions they made this offseason. I think bringing in guys like Sergachev, that's a guy that's going to add some stability to the blue line. And obviously guys like John Marino coming in, Ian Cole, all those guys are guys that are going to add some level of depth to your team that I think that this defense needed and was kind of lacking when they were in Arizona. They've got the guys up front. I think we're going to see a lot of Geeky, Gunther. Actually, no, Geeky got traded. Cooley and Gunther, as well as the rest of the guys that have already been there. And guys we saw last season, we were like, oh, that guy's pretty good. Matias Michelli is a good example of that. So I think the Arizona Coyotes, oh man, I got to put it in the Coyote jar. The Utah Hockey Club has a lot of things to be excited about this season. And again, they're going to be more motivated this year, especially going to a new team, new place, being relocated. It's going to be interesting to see how this team adjusts. We haven't seen a relocation team in a long time. The last time we saw a relocation team was, the Atlanta Thrashers going to Winnipeg, and that's where the Jets are today. So we'll see how that first season goes for the Utah Hockey Club. Moving up to 24, Pittsburgh. Yeah, so Pittsburgh, again, there's a lot of these tweener teams in the Metropolitan Division. I think the Penguins are another example of that. I think the goaltending gives me a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of concern, and Malkin did not play well last season, and that's concerning too. Crosby continues to do what he does. I'm not concerned about Crosby as much. It's more so the guys around him. Can they produce enough? Can they score enough goals? Can they, play enough decent defense, which I think they have the pieces to have a pretty good penalty kill this year. But like I said, the goal scoring thing, and now Gensel's officially gone, for the entire year. It's not like, oh, the last 20 games when we sucked, he wasn't there. Like, we're going to have a full season without Gensel. That's going to be an adjustment. So, when I look at this team, there's guys to maybe look at maybe making the lineup. We saw a little bit of O'Connor last year, really like him. I think he's going to continue to develop to a pretty good center in the National Hockey League. Owen Pickering on the blue line, another guy that probably we're going to see some of this season, and as the season goes on, even probably more of a prominent role. Now, this is a team that's aging and hanging on to the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era. Ultimately, though, I just don't think they have it still. And I think I look around at that conference and that division. You've got teams in your division like the Islanders that just might be a little bit better. The Devils are going to be better next season. In the Atlantic, you've got those teams nipping at the heels. You got Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa. All three of those teams legitimately could make the playoffs. So this is going to be a situation where I think the Penguins are starting to, Father Time is no longer on their side there in Pittsburgh, and that's why I have them at 24. Number 23, we've got St. Louis. So St. Louis is an interesting one here because what I think the Blues lack in terms of what they used to be as a kind of a veteran experienced team, they still have aspects of that, especially on the blue line, but they also have a blend of the younger players. You look at who they brought in via offer sheet from the Oilers. They bring in Philip Broberg. They have guys like Jake Neighbors in there, Drew Holloway. Like, there's things in St. Louis to make you think that there is going to be a little bit of that cardiac energy, right? The young guys being infused into the lineup, gonna be a benefit for them. Absolutely. I think that's going to be a real net benefit for them when you look at just maybe what this team is capable of this season. And, the reality is for a team like St. Louis, in the Central Division, it's going to be a little tougher this year, I think. I think because Utah's going to be a little bit better. I think Chicago's going to be slightly better. And depending on what happens with teams like Minnesota and Winnipeg, I just don't know where St. Louis is going to fall. And honestly, I don't think they're better than teams like Winnipeg or Minnesota right now. So as much as I want to give a little bit more props to St. Louis, I think there is still a little bit of a lacking of depth compared to the other teams in that division. And it kind of comes down to gut feeling because most of them are pretty close to each other, especially teams like Minnesota. But I think as of today, I'm going to leave St. Louis at 23, and I feel pretty good about that. Number 22, so we've got the Anaheim Ducks. I think the Ducks are due for a breakout season, and compared to where they've been the last couple years, 22 in our rankings is sort of a breakout. There's still kind of the situation around Trevor Zegras and John Gibson, which we're trying to find out more clarity on, whether they'll be with the team. At least at this point, it looks like they will. John Gibson's already injured, so it looks like he'll be out for a while. It's going to be the Lucas Dostal show, probably the rest of the way. It would have been nice to see that extra protection there with Gibson also there. But That's okay. I think Dostal is going to end up showing why the Ducks took him and why he's such a highly kind of coveted prospect. The Ducks have a good one there in Dostal. We saw a splash of that last season. We're going to see a splash of it this year, and I think it's going to continue to grow from there. I'm really excited for the Ducks. You've got a lot of young guys on the blue line that we're going to see a little more this season, like Jackson Lacombe. I'm really excited to see guys like that come into the lineup. This is going to be a good Ducks team. Maybe not this season, but they're one of the teams that's going to have those growing pains, have to go through some of those trials and tribulations. They're going to be a good team in the future. Just, it's going to be marginally better than it's been, but still missing the playoffs. And temper the expectations is kind of what I'll say for the Ducks. At number 21 is the Seattle Kraken. Yeah, the Seattle Kraken did make this list here, guys. So, yeah, Seattle's here at 21. I think Seattle, again, I think I like a lot of what Ron Francis has done there, especially on the blue line. Obviously, the notable additions this offseason, good guys like Chandler Stevenson up front. You look at Brandon Montour on the back end. As long as that goaltending can be serviceable and not a hindrance to this team, I think they're going to be okay. Talk about guys like Shane Wright, Jackson Cartwright that are going to get more ice time. A lot to be excited there in Seattle. Again, there's going to be growing pains for this team. That's really one of the key factors for, which group of, kind of we're at this point in the list where which of these teams' young guys can develop or is further in their development at this point. Because I think by the end of this season, the beginning of the year is going to play a lot into, we always talk about this, right? In November, at American Thanksgiving, usually when you're in a playoff spot there, it's pretty safe to say you will be in a playoff spot by the end of the year. It's very critical. So I think, guys learning fast and learning quickly, those young players on these teams in the middle of the NHL standings could be the difference whether they make the playoffs or not. And whether if they struggle out of the gate, could be the difference of them not making it. And definitely Seattle is an example of one of those teams. Number 20, this is where it gets really hard for me between like 20 and 15 because I think all of these teams, the margin between them is so small, and I think they're all pretty close to each other. And that's why at number 20 we've got, or number 19, number 20, we've got the Ottawa Senators. So the Senators, I think, are a really good team. There's a lot to like about the Senators. Linus Ullmark comes in. They've, I think seeing the development of some of those guys on the back end and up front is going to be something to look forward to this year for them. But the reality is, you look at the other couple of teams ahead of them, specifically those teams in their own division, I just don't think they stack up as well against those other teams. And like I said, it's hard for me to do this because I think the gap is so small between them. But if I had to put them in a rankings, as of right now, I would still put Ottawa lower on that list. And at number 19, we've got the Red Wings. The Red Wings just barely missed it last season. I think they're another team. Pending the goaltending situation, if their goaltending is good enough, they could be a playoff team. That's going to be the real critical factor, in my opinion, for this team. They've got a lot of good young players. We'll see hopefully some of Simon Edvinsson, some of the young players up front. Maybe we'll get to see one or two of them this season. Steve Yzerman's been building this thing for a while. They got to make the playoffs. And the expectations are in Detroit to make the playoffs in 2025. So we'll see what they do here. It's one of those things where if they could stay healthy, that would obviously help because they do have a decent amount of depth. But you start, even guys like Andrew Kopp or Dylan Larkin going out of the lineup, things quickly diminish down the middle. So I'd like to see them keep a lot of those guys obviously healthy, right? At number 18, we've got the Los Angeles Kings. I might even have them a little bit too high because I am not totally sure what's going to happen with the whole Drew Doughty thing now. If he's out till the end of this 2024 season and potentially going into the beginning of 2025, that is a huge loss for the Los Angeles Kings. That is an injury that could really sink them bad. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the rest of that blue line. They don't have that true number one now that Doughty is out. It was a freak accident, freak injury against one of his former teammates in Tanner Pearson. A very odd injury into the boards. But obviously, we're hoping for a speedy recovery there for Doughty. But that is a brutal injury for the Los Angeles Kings. Moving up to 17 is the Buffalo Sabres. And what Buffalo, I think, has that the other two, specifically Detroit and Ottawa, don't, I think their defense is a little bit more along in the process of development. I really like some of the guys they have on that blue line, and I think that their goaltending could end up being their downfall here, because between what we've seen with Devin Levi and UPL, it's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. It's either really good or not so good, and that's not really something that you want to be talking about. So for this team, I think there's a lot of things that I'm excited about. I'm excited to see potentially what is on the table here for a team like the Buffalo Sabres. A lot of young players continuing to be, infused into this lineup, which is always exciting. But can they finally get over the hump? They have the longest playoff drought in sports in the United States right now, and I think all of North America. They have the longest playoff drought. Can they break it in 2025? I'm going to guess no, but I think they're going to be pretty damn close at the very least. Number 16, just making the list by a very small margin. It's the New York Islanders. So at 16, we've got the Islanders. I think the Islanders are right there. They are so close to twilight, but I think they will make it. I'm really excited seeing Varlamov so far this preseason. He has been very good for the Islanders in between the pipes. Yeah, I know, it's the preseason, but it still matters, and I like what I've seen from him so far. The rest of the team, they've been scoring some goals. They had the game against the Rangers. They gave up a lot of goals, but I still like what I've seen from the Islanders, enough to where I think they can still make the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights, an interesting bunch here. There's obviously a couple of changes to this team. But honestly, I think even losing Logan Thompson, it wasn't the worst thing in the world for them. They're going to be okay. Honestly, I think the health of some of their top players is going to be important. And I think ultimately it's not going to be the guys like we're used to, that we're kind of used to talking about being the core of this team. It's going to be the surrounding players like Pavel Dorofeyev that are going to come into the lineup, and you're going to need to see some production from those guys. And if they can get production from those guys, see a little bit of development from the younger players and some, from the depth, a little bit of scoring depth, that is ultimately going to be the factor if Vegas can not only make the playoffs, but potentially go on a run next season. Adin Hill is back. That's good. That's obviously good news for the Golden Knights. There's a team that has a lot of promise and a lot of people that don't want them to succeed. I'm not one of those people. I like when Vegas wins. I think the NHL wins when Vegas wins. But that's my opinion. But this is a team that I think definitely could make the playoffs next year. Number 14, I think Minnesota is going to be one of the teams that jumps up a couple of spots this year. I think what Minnesota really needs is Philip Gustafsson to be on his game. Philip Gustafsson and the final season of Marc-Andre Fleury. Send out Marc-Andre Fleury with a playoff run. And I think you've got a lot of good players there like Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson-Ek. Obviously, Marco Rossi came out of the scene, did really well last season for them. Brock Faber on the back end is very much a player that is going to add a lot of stability to that back end with Jared Spurgeon and some of the other guys there. I really like the Minnesota Wild. I think they're one of those teams that sneaks into the playoffs maybe because just a team like St. Louis or Utah isn't ready. But I do think Minnesota will back their way into the playoffs, make sure they punch their ticket in 2025. Number 13, we've got the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Tampa obviously is a threat on any given season. We know what the Tampa Bay Lightning have done in the past. They still have a lot of that core, despite Stamkos no longer being there, Sergachev no longer there. But they do have a lot of guys there that can play, right? There's a team that expects to be back in the playoffs next season, competing. Vasilevsky has had a whole summer, basically, to get ready. I think Vasi's going to have a breakout season once again. We know what he's capable of there. I like my odds for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but there's always a but there. They are one of the teams that could fall off in that Atlantic this season and very quickly find themselves as one of the teams where Buffalo and Detroit are if things don't fall the right way. And obviously Jake Gensel coming in. That was huge. Number 12 is the Winnipeg Jets. Like their blue line for the most part, I think they've got some really good pieces there. A lot of things going for the Jets, but again, was last season kind of a fluke, or is that what we should expect from the Jets every year? They won the division. They played really well in the regular season, and then they fell off in the playoffs. So I don't even think playoffs is something that's even attractive enough for Jets fans. They don't want to just make the playoffs. They want to be a legit contender, going to the Western Conference Finals, Cup Finals, making some noise in the playoffs. They just have not been able to do that. So we'll see what happens for the Jets. But again, another one of those teams in the Central, kind of like we just talked about with Minnesota. We talked about earlier with, a team like Utah or St. Louis. I kind of see a team like Winnipeg in that similar vein as some of those other teams. Number 11 is Carolina. Carolina, I really like the Carolina Hurricanes. A lot of people are not so sold on them, obviously for some good reasons, losing guys like Jake Gensel, Brady Shea's no longer there. They've lost some guys along the way, but I still think this is a good enough team with where they're at in their division. I think any Rod Brindamore team, even with lesser talented teams, he's gotten a lot out of that team. And I think that's going to be a situation here once again with the Hurricanes. The goaltending's always been a little bit weird and doesn't fully make sense, but I think they're going to find a way like they typically do. This is a good regular season team and a tough playoff out once again for the Carolina Hurricanes. Could they win the Cup? Maybe. I would say this spring was a better odds for them, but with the way their season started last year, it didn't look like they would even make the playoffs. So one of those things where I'm looking at a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe they regress a little bit compared to where they were last year, but they're still a bona fide playoff team. Number 10 is the Boston Bruins. This is a team kind of like Tampa Bay. We could see them fall off quite a bit this season, depending on what happens with the rest of those teams, right? Boston, I like some of the pieces there, but listen, this whole thing around Jeremy Swayman right now, this could very easily change in the next week, but this is a very fluid situation. But as of right now, if Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark are no longer in between the pipes, what are the Bruins going to do? That is a situation that could very easily turn into what looked like not a big deal into a very big deal. And right now, for the Boston Bruins, they really got to figure that out because nothing else really matters if that's not set in place. I like the addition of Lindholm. I like Zadorov going in there. There's some players there that I like, but that is a significant issue for the Bruins and could be a major distraction up there in Boston if they aren't able to figure out a solution to it. At number 9 is the Nashville Predators. So the Predators probably overachieved in a lot of people's eyes last season. They finished with 99 points. They went on, they were one of the teams that kind of not necessarily backed their way into the playoffs, but the last week didn't play their best hockey, the last 10 games. But they did go on a hot streak. I think it was in April or March. It was in March, right around the trade deadline. They really went on a tear and played well. Barry Trotz saw what they did, even in the playoffs, and they decided to add. So now you've got guys like Ryan O'Reilly who are already there. Now you add guys like Steven Stamkos to that mix. You bring, you move on from a guy like Ryan McDonough. But honestly, I don't think it really matters. I think there's a lot here between some of the younger players like Afanaseyev and some of the younger guys that we continue to see coming into the lineup here. Even losing a guy like Askarov, they've got UC Saros, so that wasn't the biggest deal for them. I think the biggest issue I would say for this team is if Philip Forsberg isn't scoring enough. That could be an issue for this team in terms of not scoring enough. But other than that, this is a good Nashville Predators team. And I think the veteran experience that they have on the back end, especially up front, you have basically two captains there with O'Reilly and Stamkos. They're going to be okay. Just a matter of where do they end up falling at the end of the season. Because I could see this team potentially winning the division too. If you told me that, I would think it's a little bit outlandish, but I would believe you. I think that could happen for the Predators this year. Moving up to number 8, we're going to go to the New Jersey Devils. So the Devils here, so there's the rest of our list. The Devils are at 8. I like a lot of things about the Devils. Their preseason hasn't gone so well, but I think that's something that when their roster's fully put together, I think it'll be a little bit better for them. The key is they got to stay healthy. They've had a lot of issues with Heishier and Hughes over the last couple years staying healthy. Got to keep those guys healthy. That is huge. Stefan Nason comes back to the team. I like that. Jacob Markstrom in between the pipes could be good, maybe not so good. Jake Allen there. Again, he's kind of hot and cold, so I have the Devils as a team I think is going to really rise, but I don't necessarily have them where I did in my rankings from probably last month, where I had them winning the division. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I do think they are going to be a very good hockey team this year. Number 7 is the Leafs. For all the reasons we always talk about, there's a team that's great during the regular season. What are they going to do during the playoffs? That's the big question for a team like Toronto, and I think changing the captaincy over from Tavares to Matthews, as much as it's one of those things that really sucks for Tavares, I think there's going to be a huge benefit for the team. Just the locker room chemistry, the leadership of this team, it changes the dynamic enough where I think Austin Matthews and the Leafs could really make some noise next year. Not only making the playoffs or maybe just barely winning a round, I think they could legitimately be going to the conference finals and beyond. At number 6 is the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers had a great season last year. They ended up going to the Stanley Cup final. And one of those things where McDavid and Draisaitl are just so damn good. And if anything else can come out of it other than those two, this team, we saw what they were capable of in the spring. Stuart Skinner had an incredible season last year, all the way into the playoffs. So I expect that to be another thing that we look at. Like, they need good goaltending from Skinner once again. There's a team that, they lost a couple pieces. They lost guys like Broberg and Holloway. How much is that going to affect this team? We're going to probably find that out pretty early on this year. And they did add guys like Jeff Skinner, who I think are definitely going to, I think with how much they paid him, I think that's a really good contract. That's a guy that's, he had a pretty good season when it's all said and done with Buffalo last year. Obviously, is not for his cap hit, but a pretty good season. So I expect him to do pretty well in that top 6 with the Oilers. Number 5, we've got the Rangers. No surprise here. The Rangers are a really, really good hockey team. Obviously, they won the President Trophy last year. The Rangers are a legitimate team. Once again, Shesterkin's been very good for the Rangers. It's going to come down to what do the big boys do in the playoffs. They're a team that can make the playoffs every year. Absolutely, and they could even win a round or two. But then it just seems like that offense from the top-end guys just dies off. And that's been the theme for the last couple years. Can the Rangers change that this year? That's really going to be the thing for this team. I like so many pieces with this team. We're going to see a lot more of Zach Jones on the back end, which is exciting. We might even see some of the younger guys. Maybe Brendan Ottman gets a couple games in the NHL once again this year. So we'll see how things go for the Rangers. But like I said, you kind of know what you have with these teams at the top. It's just a matter of how far in the playoffs will they go. And honestly, I can't truly answer that yet because we haven't really seen any action yet. So at number 4 is the Canucks. All of that basically depends on Demko. If Demko can get back by American Halloween or American Thanksgiving, I think that's going to be okay. And if I had to choose whether we miss Demko for the first 15 games of the season or the last 15 games of the season, I take it every day. I would rather lose him for the first 15 games, figure everything out with Artur Silovs, and then we get Demko the rest of the year, hopefully. That's what I would prefer. So for the Vancouver Canucks, like I said, they lost some guys this year. They lost Zadorov. They lost some of that depth on the back end. But there's different pieces there that are pretty good still. And even though they don't have Zadorov or Ian Cole, they have other guys that have stepped in that are probably going to be just as good, if not probably even a little bit faster, even a little bit better. And they bring in guys like Jake DeBrusk up front. Yeah, it doesn't replace a guy like Lindholm, but I think DeBrusk is kind of underrated with how he was in Boston because everybody talks about Pasternak and the fact that he always wanted to trade out. I never think the fans really wanted to embrace him after that. He's going to be embraced in Vancouver as a guy that can score goals. And he'll probably be in the top 6. Maybe he'll go to the third line to fuel that line up a little bit, but I really like what they're going to get with a guy like Jake DeBrusk. And like I said, it all depends on Demko at the end of the day with the Canucks. Number 3 is the Stars. I really like the Stars. Ottinger, that defense, Heiskanen, all those guys really solid. And I think for the Dallas Stars, we're going to see more of who we saw last year really taking off for this team. The goal scoring really came to life as the season went along. I expect that to continue this year. Rupe Hentz really good down the middle. Wyatt Johnston was a breakout last year for the Stars. Expect that again this season. So I'm excited to see what the Dallas Stars do. a lot of players there that we might see a little more of, like Stan Chauvin. What's his name? I forgot his name. The Russian kid that came over. A lot to be excited about with him. So there's things about this team here in Dallas that, as good as they were last year, they're probably going to get even better than they were last season. Number 2, we've got the Colorado Avalanche. Really like the Avs. Obviously, you know how much I like Taves and Makar. But everybody else on this team is also really solid, right? McKinnon, Rantanen, Drouin had a really good season last year. So as long as those guys continue to do their thing and score goals, play defense the way they have, the biggest factor for this team, it seems like it's always the case for the Colorado Avalanche, is the goaltending. So if the goaltending can hold up enough, you got Big G, Georgiev in there, I think they should be okay. Obviously, I have them finishing first in the Western Conference, so I feel confident that they will be just fine despite in and out goaltending at points. But I think Georgiev has shown enough there in Colorado that this team will be okay. They're going to do well. They've got a lot of depth on that roster. One of the most deep teams starting this season. And that's why I have them at number 2. I had to. And at number 1, this one's kind of a formality. The Florida Panthers are at number 1. I mean, they are the defending Stanley Cup champions. So until somebody knocks them off that pedestal, until this, we kind of see puck drop for this season, the Florida Panthers are the top team still. Despite losing guys like Brandon Montour, Ryan Lomberg, all those types of players, Duclair, this is still a really good hockey team. And I think when you look at the culture that the Florida Panthers have, that is ultimately what makes this team so good. As good as the players that were there were, it's the culture of this team. And you could plug and play players into this culture, and you're still going to find some modicum of success. That is just the type of group they have there in Florida. And the Florida Panthers are legit, and I really like what I've seen from them. Yeah, the depth's going to look a little different, but I think the results are going to be pretty much the same. And, Sergei Bobrovsky, Spencer Knight, I'm comfortable with those two guys. Obviously, more so Bobrovsky, but if Spencer Knight can get it going, all the merrier. This is our rankings, guys. This is our first rankings here for the 2024-25 season. I apologize if I look a little tired. I have not gotten a lot of sleep. I'm going to fall asleep right now before work. But I had to get this video out for you guys before the season officially kicks off next week. I appreciate your support as always, guys. Once the season gets going, I would like to start live streaming again. Next week's going to be a little bit tough, but maybe next weekend, the first weekend of the regular season, I hope to put out some videos. So stay tuned. Stay tuned to the channel, and I'll get that stuff out for you guys. As always, guys, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.